stripped the caliper initially, or in fact when I inspected the caliper initially, I mentioned how small the bleed nipple was. Well, it was rusted in at the bottom. Absolute nightmare to get out. I've had to apply heat and file flats on that, as the original head just basically chewed off because it was so tight. It is now out, thank goodness. I don't know if you'll be able to see this, but it had to come out anyway because the bleed hole, which is there, is completely filled with rust. Oh, does that bleed hole? Anyway, oh, there we go. It's still full of rust. I was pointing at the wrong hole. The bleed hole is full of rust. So it had to come out. Unfortunately, I haven't yet ordered one of these. None of the parts has yet arrived. We're running a bit late on them, sadly. So when I go to pick them up, I'll have to hope that they've got a bleed nipple in. And given the thread is wider than the head was, hopefully you can supply one with a fatter head, which make it easier to get in and out. And I'll make sure it's got PTFE tape or something wrapped around it, or some sort of anti-seize grease, just to try and make sure it doesn't gum up again. Anyway, that's where we're up to on the brakes. This is the Zodiac caliper repair kit. Straight out of this bag, you get 2 bushes for the forks, which you will see later when I actually do the fork rebuild, so they will go to one side. You get 2 pins, which will be pad pins, pad securing pins, and then you get a new caliper pin. So this part takes the place of the old pin that pushes through the caliper, as we shall see in a minute, and then gets locked up with the nut on the other side. There should be 2 washers in the kit. There's one, which is irritating given it's a brand new kit and an unopened bag, because I don't think the old washer will go over this stud. We shall have to look at that. In fact, whilst I think about it, did I put washers nearby here? Or did I put them somewhere else? I put them somewhere else. Okay, I will check that later and make sure. But the diameter here is larger than the original hole in the caliper, which means we're now going to have to take the caliper half and drill it out before we can fit this and secure it. So we'll move over to the drill press and we'll work out how we're going to sort that out. Right, the caliper pin on the new stud, I think you can see that, has a noticeably bigger shank, so the caliper's got to be drilled out, which I, taking a rough measurement, make 12.5mm. So let's have a look at how we're going to achieve that. This is just a cheap pillar drill, which was bought extremely inexpensively. I've done my best to make sure the caliper's level and is perpendicular to the drill bit. And it is only the best I can do because this is not precision equipment. I'm pretty certain that that's going to be okay. Because the hole's worn oval, I've got to try and cut it off centre as well, because if you try and centre it in the oval hole, you're just moving the entire axis out of line, which makes it doubly difficult. In fact, I'm still not happy with that, so I'm going to have another fiddle about and bring you back when I am. Okay, I could mess about with this for hours because it's not It's not a professional setup by any means. That's the best way to do. I think I've got it pretty much where I want it to be. Now, I've got no cutting fluid, so it's going to have to be a bit of WD-40. It's only alloy, so hopefully it'll be okay. I can't get it any more accurate, so we're going to have to go for it. The drill bit's not even that straight. Right, that's it. Right or wrong, it's done. Okay, I'll just clean all this off and we'll check the pin gap. Right, the hole's drilled. The 12.5 milli wasn't quite enough to open the hole out, so a quick skim round with the adjustable reamer, and now we've got a good fit there. So the washer that came with the kit fits in the recess, that goes through there. There should be another washer on there, but of course the old one's no good, so I'm going to have to ream that out to, it's very close, so I'll ream that out to fit on this side, and then the nut goes on to secure. And that's our first pin sorted out. So I shall go, it's a little bit tight in there sometimes, so I shall go and ream that out to fit this, and then give the caliper a really good clean out. Get rid of all the swarf. Right, the external washer's had a quick ream as well, so that now fits. So we need to clean everything up, make sure there's no swarf around, lightly grease the shank on that, bolt it together, and then we can move on to other work. So I'll clean that back in a second. That's all been blown off. So our flat washer goes in that recess. Our bolt gets a little bit of anti-seize just to stop it sticking. Through it goes. Then our ground washer on the other side. Then our nut, which is quite ugly, isn't it? Really. But anyway, it is what it is. Now the slot on the back is quite big, but fortunately I have a C-spanner which will fit that. Probably better if I use that part. Bit fiddly because I'm trying to do it all without getting in the way of the camera. Right. Get up tight. Right, that's tight. So there we are. Looks pretty square to me. Doesn't seem to be cocked over in any particular angle. If it was, there is room to move it around slightly. But I mean, that's considering it, the old one was rattling about like mad inside the body. That's a major improvement. So, hopefully with that fitted in a new top pin, that'll stop the caliper moving up and down, which it was doing before. So the next thing to look at, I think, will be the pad pin holes, which look a little bit oval to me, but I'll check them out. Right, I'll bring you back when I do that. Right, back again. A fatal flaw in this, which I hadn't realised until I went to check, is that because the nut's so large, and it's not peened over like, it's not the right span of that, but anyway. With this, sorry, with the nut and bolt through as we saw earlier, that won't go on. So, in order to fit the new pin, you've got to put that on and tighten it up. Then fit your pin, your washer. Easier said than done. There we go, your washer. And then you need to position your nut so that your stud will actually go through. There's only one place on this one flat, and then 180 degrees from that where it will actually fit, because of the clearance with that. So there, it will fit between there, and then you've got to tighten up using that, just as a point of interest. Slightly awkward, but there you go. You live and learn. I've measured up our pins for the top, and the part that sits in the caliper, the old one and the new one match up at exactly the same size, so there's no wear on the pin, it's all been in the caliper. This surface, which fits through the fork leg, is 0.02 of a millimetre, which is basically, I think, not much more than the polish that's come off the surface. So there's not a lot I can do with these, but there you go. The new one's better than the old one, I'm sure. The caliper pins are slightly loose in each individual caliper half. However, when the caliper's bolted back up, there is absolutely minimal movement on them, really. Very, very small. So I was thinking about rebushing them, but to be honest, once this is all bolted back up together, I don't think the pads... No, that's good enough. That's pretty tight. So I'm not doing any more with the caliper pins. They'll just be assembled with new pads. So really all that's left now is to fit the piston. Now everything's cleaned up. I looked in the parts book, and the caliper's actually made up of separate parts, but I'm not going to disassemble any of those because frankly I don't see the point. So I just need to replace the seal, which is a circular rubber one. I'll just clean out that groove and bring you back once I've done that. Right, change of plan. I put the seal in the caliper body, made sure it was fully seated, then inserted a piston into the outside of the dust seal. Then, as it went past the metal spring, I had to very carefully use a hook and peel the dust seal round to lift it past. So now, hopefully, the piston will go into the caliper and the dust seal will naturally pop into its groove here. That's the plan. Who knows if it will work? And it's not looking that great at the minute. Nope. Come back to me again. Okay, we're back. Right. I'm afraid it's one of those jobs where once it started I had to keep going. So I'm going to have to explain to you what I did. So the dust seal was fitted in its groove in the caliper, and then as the piston went in, I had to use the pick tool to first of all ease the loose lip over the metal expansion ring. The piston then went in a bit further, and I had to use the pick again to ease the edge of the dust seal over the rubber piston ring that we saw being replaced earlier. Once that was over the ring, I just pushed and in it went. So there we are, it's fully home as far as I can tell. So there isn't really a lot more I can do now other than show you the pads, because I've replaced everything. In another video you'll see me replacing the bushes in the fort leg. So both bushes will have been done, the mounting pin will be done, I'll have a new mounting stud on top. The pad pins are not brilliant, but when the caliper halves are clamped together, they secure the pads perfectly adequately. There's not a lot else I can do to this brake. So let me just show you the pads and then we shall move on to the master cylinder. Now, being an older bike, you can get some bargains. So I got a brand new pair of EBCs off eBay for £8, which delivered to my door, which I think is a pretty good price, because I thought the old ones were completely worn out. Not completely worn out, but I thought they were pretty worn. However, when you compare old with new, they are in fact brand new, just old and dirty. So I will be fitting the new pads, but the old ones will go on the shelf for emergency use later on. So let's move on to the master cylinder. I've given the master cylinder a quick coat of paint. Nothing special, just a quick blast. So let's see what we get in our little rebuild kit, which is again a Zodiac part. So we have a spring and a washer, the felt pad, a circlip, the O-ring. Right, so once again, we seem to be a part short. Because that washer, the felt washer, should have two washers, one either side. That's your old pin. And there's the second washer, which compresses the felt. So we are a washer short. So we're going to have to use an old one. But first, I'm going to clean this pin up. The spring goes in first. Followed by a cap, which is slightly different from the original one, but nevertheless, in it goes on top of the spring. Followed by our rubber seal. And then our piston, which is sticking slightly at the minute because the edges here are slightly rough. Okay, our new piston, the corrugations on the side were oversized. I compared against the old piston and it's wanting to jam in the bore, so I've knocked off the high spots and now it fits in, springs up and down more as it should do. Now the next bit, I really don't know how I'm going to show you the next bit because I've got to compress that into the bore far enough down to get the circlip on. New circlip came with the kit, which is a bit of a double-handed job. I'll try it with the camera in place, but I really doubt this is going to be possible, but I'll give it a go. So basically I've got to compress that. Oh no, I don't. I've got to lubricate the seal first. Here we go. and having lubricated the seal, that needs to be compressed like so. Right, I'm not going to be able to do that and show you that, but basically you see what I'm going to do. I'm going to compress it with a screwdriver, and then I'm going to reach in and put the circlip in. Even if I don't get it in a groove, as long as I compress it into the bore, I can then tap it down and into its position. But it is going to be a three-handed job, this, so I'm going to have to do it and bring you back, because I really don't see how this is possible to do and film at the same time. So I'll bring you back in a second. Right, circlips in. Just check it's fully in its groove, which it is. And then we have a washer. Our large felt seal. A bit oversized, to be honest. That doesn't look right, does it? No, that doesn't look right. Something's wrong. Just check the position of the handlebar. Okay, I was confusing myself for a second. Right, it's just because I think the felt is so new and big. So let me just go and clean these up. And that should be us ready to connect that up. Back with you in 1 second. Right, so everything's cleaned up. So that has to go, there's a washer in there already. So that has to go in there. Compressing that felt, which doesn't want to go in very easily at all. And then our pin and a spring and a washer, which goes into the felt, which will push against the cylinder. And then our pivot, which we're just going to give a little bit of cover slip, will fit inside our handlebar lever. And then the hole in that fits into our pin. And then we need to put our pivot pin, lightly lubricated, through there. Which doesn't seem to want to go. Fairly tight. Let's try again. You still see that? Yeah. It's got to go in there, but it's quite tight, so I just have to give it a little tap. Coming through. Yep. Through it goes. And then on the underside, if you remember, we had our little E-clip. Now, I was quoted about a £5, I think, from memory, for a genuine Harley Davidson E-clip. So I went to my local nut and bolt shop, who provided me with that for the princely sum of 30p. So I'm sorry, Harley Davidson, but you won't be getting my money on this occasion. Small screwdriver, just make sure that's seated, which it is. And there we go. All done. And then we have our cap, which are just a quick clean. Obviously not well enough because there's a bit of muck there, but anyway. Quick clean. And for that, we have another Zodiac part. Which is that really gooey gasket, which will go on there, clearly marked this side up. Very helpful. There we have one rebuilt master cylinder. Now, whilst I was at my nut and bolt shop, he assured me that these would fit my missing bolt. Were they correct? Yes, they were. So I now have 4 of those to replace the switch side. But can't fit this yet because obviously it's got to go back on the bike. So that shall go back in there with its little screws, and that will have to wait. So we now have a rebuilt master cylinder, a rebuilt brake caliper, rebushed forks, rebushed caliper. There's not really a lot else I can do to make these brakes work. So there we go. And finally we have our new bleed screw. It's exactly the same as the old one. There's a little bit of PTFE on the threads only. As you can see, I've kept it well away from where the fluid will be. So it acts as a thread sealant and an anti-corrosion measure. So there we go. All ready to build them back up on the bike.